Okay, everybody, welcome back to the DanaBuckler Show. My name is Dana, and I'm pleased to welcome back, and it has been way too long. Great friend of the show, writer, director, film historian, calling in all the way from Los Angeles, California, my good friend, Kelly Goodner. Kelly, welcome back to the DanaBuckler Show. How are you?
I'm good. Things have been good recently, and I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah, no, it's been too long. I think we did underrated comedies was the last one that we did. Well, that was,
Yeah.
gosh, that was, I hate to say this, it's almost, 2 years ago? Almost a year and a half ago?
God. Wow.
So it's been,
It's funny because with you, I always feel like it was both yesterday and forever ago.
yeah, I know. And the great thing is that we're able to just pick up where we left off. So, you know, time be damned. We're good. We're ready to have a great conversation. But before we jump into the subject of today's episode, I know because I still keep up with a lot of the things you're doing, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit or tell the listeners a little bit about what you've been up to since the last time you were on the show, because you've been doing some really interesting and fun things.
It's funny, like my degree is in cinema studies, so I've always been kind of a film historian person. But probably since the last time I talked to you, that's sort of the new thing I've been doing, like as actual work. Still screenwriting, still doing all of that, but I've had all these fun gigs come up with my husband, mostly Jim Hemphill, who you've had on the show also. We've programmed a couple things at theaters, a couple movies, and we've been doing some audio commentaries together. We've been more talking heads together recently.
That's awesome. Can you just mention a couple of the audio commentaries that you've done? I certainly would love to check them out.
Yeah, we can't mention them all right now because until they're like official, we can't say. But we did The Exorcist 2 together, which was a lot of fun. And then I did The Howling 2, not with Jimmy, just by myself and with the director, Philippe Mora. And that just got announced today.
Wow. I have so many questions about The Howling 2. Your sister is a werewolf.
They will all be answered.
So many questions. Wow. Okay, so that one, is that out? When does that get released? I have to get that.
They announced it today. I think it might, I don't know when it's coming out exactly. I have, actually, hang on. I have the info on it from this morning. Let's see. I didn't read the date that it was coming out.
So many questions.
I don't have it. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Maybe you could answer this one question for me, because I've always been curious. I don't have a huge collection of Blu-rays and 4Ks, but the ones that I do have, I get them because I'm genuinely interested in the commentary. Mm-hmm. I want to know the behind the scenes, the story behind everything that has to do with that. When you record a commentary, I mean, is this a we hit record and it's a one and done? I mean, do you do takes? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I prefer to just, you're like on a stage and that's it, and you just keep going. Yeah. Because there have been incidents both with us and other people in the past where they would say things like, you're going to cut that, right? Or can we cut that, or take that part out? And then it doesn't come out. And so, Jimmy, I think, has maybe cursed before and like, and he's like, you'll take that out. And then it doesn't come out. So I kind of try to just keep going. Like they'll tell you can like stop or rewind, but with like time code and everything, it to me, it just seems easier to just keep going.
Right. I gotcha. It's fascinating. I'm so ready to check some of these out. So thank you for mentioning them. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, they're actually a lot of fun to do. And it's good to have, like, normally, you have your podcast where you can talk about the things you're seeing and your thoughts and everything. And normally, I'm just watching them in my living room with no outlet to talk about them except friends. So it's been kind of fun to do like the deep research and then actually, give knowledge to people who want it. As opposed to just the people I'm spitting it at.
Yeah.
Whether they want it or not.
This is one of these comes full circle for me moments, because one of the most popular episodes in the history of this podcast was the one that we did on The Exorcist. And if you recall, that episode was broken into 3 parts. The first part was me sort of just going over the general history of the first film. Then you came on board to really sort of dissect the script. And then sort of the bonus on that was Jim came on to be the defense of The Exorcist 2, because it was considered to be a much maligned sequel. And he really came on there and really, I thought, did a tremendous job of championing that film. So to hear that the two of you did a commentary, that is also at the top of my list of physical media to get my hands on. So I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it is really funny how these Exorcist things just kind of find us. But and it was fun to learn all the different things about it. And I've always thought that one was great. And I think like Jimmy being out there as a supporter and advocate of it has brought people out of the woodwork. Like, I've always said that. It was always great.
It's awesome. Oh, it's awesome. Kelly, I mentioned to you that I'm into my 11th year of podcasting. And my podcast has always really, for the most part, centered around films released in the 70s, 80s, 90s, some in the early 2000s. And we sometimes do some contemporary film review. But for the most part, it really has been an 80s and 90s centric podcast. Mm-hmm. I was surprised to learn, to kind of just go through the back catalog of, all the movies that had been covered in the, 10 plus years history of this podcast, and realized that nary a discussion on the Police Academy films and franchise has ever happened. And then I will say this, I was at my quote unquote day job about a month ago. And, there's about 45 of us on staff. I'm 46 years old. I'm one of the older people at my job. And there's a lot of, young adults, early 20s. And I was frankly surprised, disheartened, dismayed to talk movies with them and bring up the Police Academy films and for them to have a puzzled look on their face in the sense of, what are you talking about? I've never even heard of these movies. So
unthinkable.
It is. It really is, because, and I was mentioning this to my girlfriend.
They owned our childhood. The biggest.
Yes. And I mentioned this to my girlfriend, Jess. I said, can you believe this? And she goes, well, you have to blame the parents on that. And I said, you're absolutely right. And I'm realizing, and I'm not trying to be on a high horse and talk about the younger generation, but I don't feel like they're seeking out older movies the way we did when we were in our 20s. We knew movies that were 20, 30 years older than us. So that's a discussion for a completely another time.
It is interesting. I mean, it's something we deal with all the time. It's like just the fascination with what they know and what they don't know, because some things that have carried forth, I'm like, that I wouldn't have picked that one to bring on through history, like there's better stuff for you to know. But, they are finding some things. But I also think, like even my friend Lauren, who is my age, I think the police, the views of the police have changed so much that that's not a fun topic for some people anymore, so maybe that's part of why. I don't know. And we'll unpack some of that, during this discussion, I'm sure. The first Police Academy movie came out in 1984, and I'm wondering, before we sort of jump into it, if you can sort of speak to where comedies were. I'm thinking the best analogy I can give, or sort of the best example I can give, is in 1978, Halloween comes out. Halloween's made for $300,000. It makes a boatload of money, and it creates a formula. So around that same time, you get movies like National Lampoon's Animal House, Caddyshack, Porky's. This formula has been created. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to a little bit about what that formula was and why it was so effective. And that really does lead us into 1984's Police Academy. That style of comedy. These things were cheap to produce, and they made a lot of money. Yeah, I don't know how they were cheap to produce, though, to be honest. Because they, back then they would crash cars and what, things that now when you think low budget, none of that's going to happen. But I guess it was, a different financial model back then. And also videotapes used to cost so much. So I guess that's how they made a lot of their money back.
Sure.
Just for video stores to buy them. It's like you could make something that had a little bit of money and still, make your money back, because tapes cost like $98 or something. But I don't know. I was a huge fan of this period of these like semi-unknown ensembles of like fresh talent. I think that was part of it.
To me, that sort of speaks to why these things didn't have huge budgets, because you nailed it right there when you said, fresh talent, ensemble pieces. They were not paying these people a lot of money to be in these films. They will eventually start having to pony up some money to keep some of these actors in the ones. But I just wrote down some notes here that just says 1982/1983 timeline here. Police Academy was inspired by a real life experience of the film's producer, Paul Molansky. During the production of another film in San Francisco, Molansky noticed a group of misfit, diverse police recruits at a training session and found the situation humorous. He imagined that movie focusing on these unlikely recruits. He said, something like this could be successful. That brings us to 1984's Police Academy. Your initial thoughts on the first film, and then we'll just talk a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say too is they did have some other ones like Car Wash, and like these ensembles had come a little bit before it. But I think the real discovery of Police Academy is probably, Neil Israel and like his formula for these ensembles, which I'm a sucker for it. That I had a disturbing conversation with Jimmy this morning when I realized that everyone doesn't know who Neil Israel is, because he was like, his name was on everything when I was growing up. And so he wrote, so this movie, the first one, was written by Neil Israel, Pat Proft, and Hugh Wilson. And Neil Israel, he wrote one of my favorites, Moving Violations, as you know.
We've talked about that. Absolutely.
Yes. Bachelor Party, Real Genius, and Look Who's Talking To, which, that's a little later. But he kind of specialized in these like misfit ensemble comedies. And actually he wrote a lot with Pat Proft, who also did those. But then Pat Proft went on to do like he got in with the Zuckers as well. So all those spoof movies, like The Naked Gun and Hot Shots and Scary movies, Pat Proft was also on. And then Hugh Wilson, he created WKRP in Cincinnati, and he directed First Wives Club. So you've got kind of an all-star writing team also on this first one, who sort of created the model for like, even though, like you're saying, this kind of formula had started a little bit before, Police Academy like shot it into the stratosphere. And then you have Stewardess School and Ski School and like all of these other knockoffs of Police Academy that are the same thing. But the first movie, you've got Steve Guttenberg as the major discovery, I would say. Like that's the standout that really made this take off. And G.W. Bailey and Commandant Lassard. So I think like introducing that core and I guess there were a couple of other ones too, Michael Winslow, Hightower, all the main people initially. I just feel like they got it so right off the bat, with that core group. But I feel like, to me, it found its legs a little bit later, not in the first movie.
Okay, no, I agree with you on that one. So I was watching this first one, and I want to start by saying this movie had a reported budget of $4.5 million, and it made close to $150 million worldwide.
Yeah.
That's 40 years ago. A movie today with a $40 million budget would be thrilled with a $150 million box office return. So I don't want to underscore or like let people know, like, this movie was a phenomenally successful film when it came out in 1984. And critics be damned, because they did not like this movie. Would you agree, Kelly?
No, I heard that that Siskel and Ebert hated it. They felt like it didn't show its punchlines on the screen, or like they just felt like it was incompetently done.
The basic tagline here, or excuse me, the log line, is a storyline follows a new recruit policy for an unnamed city, Toronto. I'm sorry to spoil it for everybody. That would be Toronto. An unnamed city's police academies take on any recruit who wishes to apply and study to become a police officer. So when we're first introduced to Steve Guttenberg, he is parking cars, and he's kind of just sort of like this, cocky guy. And it's apparent that he's gotten in trouble a number of times. He goes in front of a captain of a police station who basically says, look, you're either going to go to jail or you're going to go to the police academy. And, we've talked about the inciting incidents of movies before. Is the inciting incident of this film the fact that he just wants to get kicked out of the police academy?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I didn't, structure these out, but yeah, that's his initial goal. And then at some point it changes and he's like, no, you can't kick me out, later on.
He really takes a liking to Kim Cattrall and then all that stuff. This movie's rated R. How do you feel about it? I mean, watching it today through today's lens, this is pretty much a PG-13 rated movie by today's standards. Would you agree?
Yeah, I didn't even think it was, that far from PG-13 back then, except that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. PG-13 didn't exist for a couple more years.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. The police academy sort of set the standard, but this thing's going to keep on going. And it's really the sequels that I want to talk about. But can you and I both agree that we enjoyed this first film? This was a fun movie, great time, but like you said, didn't really hit its stride just yet.
No. I mean, but again, we all still, you watched them indiscriminately. 1, 2, 3, 4. It didn't matter. Everyone is watching Police Academy all the time, some version of it. So it's not that it's not good, not that it's not enjoyable. And again, did have so many great people, like Steve Guttenberg right after this. He just blew up for the next few years. Listen to what he did right after this. And he hadn't done much before it. He had done Chicken Chronicles, Boys from Brazil, Can't Stop the Music, Diner. And Diner's probably what got him the job, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And then, but right after this, he does part 2 of this and Cocoon, which Cocoon was massive. And then he did part 3 and Short Circuit the next year. Short Circuit was massive. And then 3 Men and a Little Baby, or 3 Men and a Little Baby, 3 Men and a Baby the year after that. So it didn't last super long, but he was the number one guy. I mean, he was sort of like Ryan Reynolds if people didn't have to be superheroes, nowadays. He was kind of jokey in everything, but also leading man. So it was really it wasn't just this movie in this genre that it had an effect on. It blew him up. But I think he was the only one really that totally blew up off of this.
From this series. Yeah, no, I thought long and hard about that today. I mean, obviously there are little cameos.
Kim Cattrall, but not because of this series.
Yeah. And we're looking at, Sharon Stone's in one of these movies, David Spade's in one of these films, but their career, to second what you said there, didn't blow up because of these films. But, Guttenberg.
Well, George Gaines, actually, Commandant Lassard, he blew up a little bit because he got the Punky Brewster role.
That's right.
He was the dad of the adoptive dad of Punky Brewster. So him a little bit, but really it was mostly just Guttenberg.
I was a kid, sorry, listeners, but sometimes when Kelly and I are talking, we go on little side tangents, and unfortunately this just happens when I do a podcast. When I have my own podcast, I can make the rules. I remember Punky Brewster, but the only episode I remember of Punky Brewster was one of the very special episodes where
I feel like I know what you're gonna say. I'm gonna see. Okay.
Is it the one where they find the old fridge in the backyard?
Yes. And it was like, oh my God, never go in a refrigerator. It'll seal and you won't be able to get out. I didn't know that. It was informative. I
remember watching that and running into the kitchen and looking for where the fridge locks. And it didn't. It just had a gasket seal. But it's interesting that we both remember. That's the only episode I remember of Punky Brewster was one of those. For those who don't know, comedy, sitcoms back in the 80s, every once in a while would have a very special episode that you were encouraged to watch with your kids. Or parents were encouraged to watch. So I just
sort of learning experience for us.
Yes, I do remember that.
Don't play with guns or don't, play hide and go seek and hide in the fridge,
Traumatized me for about a month with that refrigerator. I didn't want to go near it. So okay, so that's George Gaines. So what I want to do with each movie, I want to ask you if there was a standout performance in this film, and if there was a favorite scene that you have. in the first Police Academy?
I was thinking about that in terms of favorite scene, and that is a little tough. I didn't feel like this one, like it had a lot of funny moments, but I don't know that there was like a set piece or anything in this first one that I was just in love with. However, favorite performance, G.W. Bailey, always as Captain Harris.
Yeah. And, I'm really, I'm going to second you on that one. We, Jess and I watched all of these movies over the past week, leading up to this one. And, G.W. Bailey, he's just, and I'm going to, obviously, we're not going to talk about him again until we get to the fourth one. But in this first one, to me, he is the standout. And I don't want to describe the scene, but the line, "Somebody call a veterinarian," is one of, is one of the funniest parts of the movie for me. So,
yeah. That's actually part of why I think I underestimate maybe 2 and 3 is because they don't have him. This was the first time where I paid attention to why that happened. I was like, why would you get rid of him? That's craziness. And now I'm like, oh, because they're not at the academy anymore.
Right.
Now they're police officers and he worked at the academy. So It makes sense. But
so, like we talked about, this movie, massively successful. Warner Brothers is not going to waste any time. They're going to start getting these movies out. And I want to emphasize, these things are coming out almost to the day, 1 year apart. In some cases, less than a year apart. But the first Police Academy movie is so successful that Paul Mazansky is able to really make some money by selling the international rights to the sequels before the movies are even made. So we're getting into a formula now where these films are profitable before they're even released.
And I think that too, like usually things sell better foreign when they are really visual. And so this kind of comedy, it's not really dependent on dialogue for the most part. I mean, some of, there are dialogue jokes, but like for a foreign audience, there's so many, slapstick kind of antics. I can see why they would have traveled well.
So exactly. And so they're going into this thing already. It almost takes the pressure off a little bit when you're making these movies, because it's like, well, we're already operating in the black. So let's just have fun. Jerry Paris is going to direct Police Academy 2, their first assignment, which is going to be released on March 29th, 1985. On a $7.5 million budget, this film made $115 million. Again, that is a massive haul for a movie. Kelly, this movie is going to be rated PG-13, and you and I were talking the other day about the fact that the first Police Academy is rated R, this one is PG-13, and then the rest of the movies moving on are PG. And I think we are kind of saying that we think PG-13 is kind of the sweet spot for this series. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they're always going to be cartoonish, so they're always going to be pretty childish. But like, I think they need a little edge, just not quite such kid stuff.
Yeah,
as they kind of veer into later.
So Howard Hessman is going to be Captain Pete Lassard. Now, the basic plot of this film is he's oversees a precinct. It's riddled with crime. He's got 30 days to turn the precinct around. He tells the police commissioner that he needs at least 12 more officers. The commissioner tells him he can have 6. And of course, the 6 that he get are all new recruits from the first Police Academy movie. So this is Police Academy 2, their first assignment. This is where we see Steve Guttenberg, Bubba Smith, David Garf, Michael Winslow, Bruce Mahler, and Marion Ramsey all return. Callahan does not return in this movie because she was actually pregnant at the time that they were filming this film. So she's going to return for the rest of the movies moving forward. But that is the only reason why she was not in this movie.
Oh, I assumed it was because she was like an academy instructor and therefore, like they had moved on from the academy.
So just for the research I thought was she was absolutely on board to do it, but just the timing of it, because they were not going to wait for her, unfortunately. They were just like, we have to get this movie out. So this film is going to introduce one of the characters that I could not keep it together for, the rest, the next 3 movies or 2 movies after this, and that's Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, yeah.
So can we just talk about,
I could talk about Bobcat Goldthwait for days.
All right. So for those who haven't seen this film, we're going to keep the spoiler free. It's really the police. It's the police officers versus this gang that's terrorizing the neighborhood, and the gang's leader is Zed, and he's played by Bobcat Goldthwait. And I am hard pressed to think of another character that's even remotely similar to the character of Zed. So please tell me your thoughts.
I agree. I mean, he's almost maybe more of a like comedic Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet or something. Like just crazy. And he's so funny the way he'll seem like he's apologizing and being really sensitive and then screaming in your face, Yeah, I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, obviously I was very young, so, I hadn't seen much, but I loved Bobcat, loved him. One of my first crushes, loved Bobcat. And I like him here as the bad guy, but later, I mean, I can tell this spoiler, I assume. Of course. That he's going to turn good later and be on the team and be a cop, because you just can't get rid of Bobcat, You can't have Bobcat in this movie and then not have him later, or it would be a huge letdown.
I'm trying to figure out what this movie's like without his character in it. I don't know if it is as effective.
No, I feel like he, in the first movie you had Gutenberg, where it was like, boom, on the scene, this big presence. I mean, very different sort of presence. But I feel like Bobcat delivers that in this movie, where it's like, whoa, big new discovery, like fresh face, and like, again, that edge where they have to feel like properly revolutionary or, subversive. And I think once they're kind of cops and following the rules a little bit, that goes away, but then he brings it back in, the chaos.
We mentioned earlier that G.W. Bailey is not going to be in part 2 and part 3.
Sadly.
Art Matrino plays Lieutenant Mauser. And we're also going to get our first introduction of Proctor. So, yeah.
Proctor, by the way, is my first celebrity sighting ever in person.
Really?
I saw Michigan Airport.
No.
Maybe might have been 1989, something like that.
So that must have been awesome. So
yeah, well, I was trying to tell my mom, it's Proctor, and she had no idea what I was talking about.
I don't even know how to talk about it. Proctor by himself is fine, but when he is paired up with either Mauser or Harris, there's just a winning combination there. That scene in Police Academy 2, when Mauser has figured out that if Captain Lassard fails, that he'll become the new captain of the precinct. Trying to explain to Proctor that if he becomes captain, he's going to need a new watch commander. That entire little 30-second sequence is one of the funniest moments of the movie, where Proctor just can't figure it out.
So, these academy rats are going to save the precinct, right?
Hey, personally, Lieutenant, I hope they fall flat on their asses.
That could be arranged,
What do you mean?
Oh, if they fail, the sod's out. That makes me the captain. If I'm captain, I'm going to need a new watch commander.
So?
So, we make sure they fail.
Who?
New recruits.
Why?
If they fail, the sod is out, I'm in. And I'm going to need somebody to be the new watch commander. And you know who that's going to be.
Who?
You, dickhead, you.
Oh, good idea.
You're not playing with a full deck, are you?
Oh, I don't play cards.
So that scene right there, I can't keep it together. I just laugh uncontrollably in that part right there.
Yeah, Proctor, it's a different kind of acting almost. I mean, not just Proctor, but what G.W. Bailey knows how to do, what some of these guys from just a different school and a different, era's acting style can do, with hitting beats, and just knowing how to regulate a scene, where they're going to get numerous reactions out of you. You know what I mean?
I do.
Nowadays, it's more awkward comedy instead of more of a choreographed type of a comedy.
I watched this whole thing with a new lens, and it really is Mauser and Harris that I don't think people give them enough credit for how talented they are. like you said it perfectly. The comedic timing that they have is remarkable. It's truly remarkable. And
I mean, just like even saying nothing, the eyebrows, the like downturned lips, the like slight, like the control they have over their faces and bodies to get reactions from you are really amazing.
One of the things that the first Police Academy does, and it's going to move forward with all of our characters, is each one of our main protagonists, they all have a unique quirk about them. Like David Tackleberry is obsessed with guns in the military. Michael Winslow, Larvell Jones he's got the he can do all the voices and then the funny sound effects. And Fackler's incredibly clumsy. Marion Ramsey as Hook, she's got that soft voice until she always uses that one catchphrase.
Yeah, she was an identification figure for me because I was very shy about speaking up and using my voice ever as a kid, and then if no one was listening to me and it was very important, I would kind of have a Hooks moment.
I love it. So, but my question is, I was trying to figure this out. I was writing some notes down. So we know Hightower's big and he can flip cars, and we know Tackleberry and everything. But what was Mahoney's hook? Was he the Jerry Seinfeld to everyone else in the apartment on the Seinfeld show, where he was just kind of like the every guy and he was cool? Like, I'm just trying to figure out what his hook was.
I was thinking the same thing, and I'm like, who is that today, or what is that thing? And I came up with Ryan Reynolds, that like it is a little bit Van Wilder. It's just that guy who like, I know how everything works. Like I can get along with anybody. I can go in the gang and get along. I can, get along with the authority figure. You know what I mean? Like he just knows how to talk to everybody. He can always find the angle, hits on women, may get turned down, but eventually he's going to get them, he has obstacles, but he's always going to win.
I wrote down, always lands on his feet.
Exactly.
That's what always, I wrote down.
And he never gets down too far.
No.
Like you never see a Dark Night of the Soul with Mahoney, like, oh, what am I going to do? That never happens.
Well, put a pin in that part right there. Put a pin just from what you said there, because starting with part 3, we have, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we get the serious climactic ending of we have a big giant action set piece. But we'll get to that in just a moment. But I saw Mahoney say, "I'm going after the governor," very serious. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like serious Mahoney. So I want to talk just a little bit briefly. They're rookies. They're new recruits in this movie, and some of them get partnered up with veteran officers. And, obviously Tackleberry, he ends up, marrying the...
Colleen Camp.
Kirkland. Yeah, Colleen Camp. Yeah, he ends up marrying Kirkland. But can we talk about just for a moment, one of the best sort of sight gag, type of characters was the one that Mahoney was paired up with, Vinny Stuhlman.
No, is this... Yeah, his gross partner.
Yes.
I would say... I mean, this movie actually has a number of hilarious scenes. Again, I don't want to totally give it away, but he's filthy. That's basically his trait. He's disgusting. And like will eat things out of the trash, and his apartment is filthy. And like, his cat is going to the bathroom everywhere. And like maybe not that sophisticated a concept for a character, but every single gross thing worked and got a laugh or a from me.
So effective. I kept using sort of Jess as my meter of like, I think this is funny. How is she reacting? And just that whole scene when Mahoney goes to Vinny's apartment for the first time. So you sure you don't want some breakfast? And he just goes, Bunky, the litter box.
Yeah.
Oh God. And then he finds the Crunch Bar. He goes, look at this perfectly, ants. That's why there's ants all over. Like I can't explain.
Brush them off. No big deal.
Normally that type of what I'll call sort of silly juvenile humor doesn't work on me, but he sells it so perfectly because there's not an ounce of, he knows what he's doing is gross. He just buys it. He's just all in. It's so effective.
Yeah, no, I was actually kind of sad that character didn't continue because it was working.
Speaking of characters not continuing, can we circle back to the first Police Academy for a moment and talk about George Martin and Leslie Barbara? I wonder why those guys never... I don't know what was going on in their world, because I've never really seen them in anything else besides the first Police Academy movie.
I'm not too familiar either, but I do feel like that, like the ladies' man thing, like Mahoney kind of covers that.
Yeah.
A little bit, so it's not as unique a quirk, as like they didn't have as unique, even though Barbara was like likable, but just not a unique enough quirk like that you can keep coming up with obvious gags for them.
I'm looking up right here. Andrew Rubin played George Martin, or George Martin, how he would pronounce it. He was in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He was in 10 movies. Starting from 1973 through 1988. He did one more movie in 1988 called Deadline Madrid, which was a made-for-TV movie, and never really did anything besides that. So not 100% sure why he didn't, why things didn't go any further for him. But I'm also looking up Donovan Scott, who played Leslie Barbara, who is still alive. He's 76 years old, and he is still working.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing TV. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's familiar. A lot of the people from these, even the bigger people, animation is where they live.
Oh, yeah.
Going through some of these credits, I was like, I need to be watching more animated stuff, like modern animated series. I feel like whenever I've been babysitting, I'm like, this stuff is terrible, but they're not the right shows, I guess, because it's all my favorite people doing the voices.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. So...
Oh, by the way,
yes.
So I was researching Bobcat, and did you know that he went to high school with Tom Kenny, who's SpongeBob SquarePants?
I did not know that, no.
And they were a comedy duo back then. Bobcat was one of those guys like Dave Chappelle or Seth Rogen who was doing stand-up at like 15, like professional stand-up. And then he and Tom Kenny, they had a comedy duo called Bobcat and Tomcat.
No kidding.
Way back then, yeah.
No,
so that was a fun thing to discover. Well, and they both obviously do animated voices now.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I need to look.
Yeah. I also discovered for Walking Dead fans. Did you watch that show? I
really did. I watched the first season, and I thought the first season was like 7 or 8 episodes long, and
and then they got long.
And it just seemed like, and I'm gonna really. My new thing to say, if I'm not a fan of something, I like to say it's not for me. But with The Walking Dead, it just seemed like every season was, we have to get somewhere. Then they get there, it's not what they thought. They have to go somewhere else, and it just
that is pretty much the zombie movie form. But it took me forever to really get into it. Like I watched that first episode kind of a few times, and I just like drifted off from the series and never went any further. And then when the pandemic started, of all times, I binged the whole thing and I got super hooked. And I found out that like the first episode was really just to kind of get your toes wet. Like it really changed a lot after that. But anyway, so like maybe season 4 or something, there's this character Jadis who is super cool. And she's like she runs this kind of group of people in a junkyard, and she was an artist and whatever, but she's like kept these people alive there. Anyway, Bobcat married her this April. So that was very exciting to me. I was like, that is a super cool couple, if you know who Jadis is. And she's on the newest iteration of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, also.
I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to watch it. I want
to say it's season 4 or 6, whichever is the Negan season. That's when it happens.
Okay. Well, even as somebody who didn't watch the show, was familiar when Negan, was introduced, because that was such a buzz.
That was some real stuff.
Like that was. How do people survive with season-ending cliffhangers? I never watched. That's why it was
good that I binged, because I don't know what I would have done in the moment.
I watched all of Breaking Bad after the show was off the air.
Me too.
And I'm like,
or maybe I watched it all right before the final season.
Sure. I'm telling you right now, I didn't even know what was, because I was watching it on Netflix. I didn't even know what season I was in. I was just watching the show, and I'm like, people are like, no, that was a major cliffhanger. I'm like, it was. Wow.
Yeah, I'm so glad I didn't have to experience it, because then it like for a couple of weeks afterward, you're just not feeling right.
No.
You're just unsettled until you forget about it.
All right. So to Police Academy 2, Who was your?
Oh, we forgot to mention Tim Kazurinsky also appears in this one.
That is correct.
That is his first arrival.
Yes, absolutely. And for Tim Kazurinsky he was kind of getting his footing. He was an SNL alumni at this point.
Like 81 to 84, it said on IMDb.
Yeah, which is a discussion about Saturday Night Live in the early 80s. That was an awkward time for Saturday Night Live. I mean, you had Eddie Murphy. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to go there, Kelly, because we'll spend an hour talking about it.
Yeah, true. However, though, this movie was written by Barry Blaustein and David Sheffield, who I always think of as Eddie Murphy's writers. Like, he met them on SNL. They did the James Brown hot tub sketch, and then, went on to do Coming to America and its new sequel, Boomerang, The Nutty Professor, and that sequel. So these are big SNL writers, too.
They know what they're doing. Yeah, they do.
They know their stuff.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but when we're done here, I'll probably ask you to tell me what your favorites are of the series. We don't have to rank all 7 films, but I'll probably ask you what your standouts are. But I can tell you that I went into watching these movies for this podcast with an understanding that Police Academy 2 is the one that I've seen the most. It's the one that I want to watch the most. It's the one that I think has the best flow to it, if you will. Like more of it works than doesn't work for me, and that I can say that I can't say that about every other Police Academy movie, but this is the one where more stuff works than doesn't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, and it's got that, like, in terms of favorite scenes, it's got that Mauser shampoo prank that goes on, like the repercussions of it go on for several scenes. So that one would probably be my standout.
It's brilliant. That particular scene is brilliant because it involves him, literally going out in the hallway of the police station, and but you're right. The repercussions do keep coming for that. You've got Proctor cutting his hair, and Proctor does that famous thing with the mirror where he just won't hold it still. Right. Take a look here. Another scene that I find I can't explain why it works so much for me is when Zed's gang goes to the grocery store.
Me too. Yes.
And he just has some, at the end where he says, "Thank you very much. There's really good bargains here." Exactly. I cannot speak to just how brilliant Bobcat is. Like, that he's so.
Yeah. Well, and it's not like he got that from anywhere. It's not like, oh, he's the new so-and-so, or he's doing what so-and-so did 20 years ago. Like, I don't know where he got it. This, like, being very polite and then like screaming, but it works.
To hear him in regular interviews, like,
I know, and he's so smart and like thoughtful.
Yeah, like, of course, I'm a kid in the 80s when these movies are coming out. I think that's how he really is in real life. Like, I'm thinking that I'm scared to meet
like
him.
Animal from the Muppets.
Yeah, that is the best way to describe it. I agree with you on that one. So,
which my Animal's kind of, would kind of be scary when he's like, in your face, but he's also cute.
I want to keep the spoiler free, but eventually Mahoney has to go undercover to infiltrate the gang, and
love that.
And his gang is called the Archies, and he's Jughead.
There's so much Archies, so many Archies references in this series.
There is.
Like, there was an Archies like sign behind them at one point, and then someone, there was like, my mother's name was Jughead. Yeah, there's a lot of weird Archies references, which I loved the Archies too. So
I'm sorry I keep losing it because that is another line from the second one that I lose it. He goes, "What's your name, Jughead?" "My mother's name was Jughead." I just lose it. There's a scene when Proctor's in the porta potty, and he's reading an Archie's comic. He's reading an Archie's comic in that one. Standout performance in Police Academy 2 for me is going to be Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah, still Bobcat.
Until
Bobcat goes away, it's going to be Bobcat.
Yeah, well, no, it's going to be it's really going to be tough to top him. He really has nailed it. So again, just so we're keeping track, the first Police Academy is March 23rd, 1984. Part 2 is March 29th, 1985. Part 3 is March 21st, 1986. So when I say these things are coming out literally a year apart, they are. Like they're
not wanting to mess with that formula. They're like, people like it at this time of year. Let's stick with it. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
They're going to bring back the same director, Jerry Paris, to direct Part 3. And by the way, I want to mention that Paul Mozansky, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm not getting your not pronouncing the name correctly. He's doing profit participation points in these movies, and he's doing extremely well for himself at this point. I was doing a little bit of research, and they were talking about prior to the release of Police Academy, he was eating at delis and diners in LA. And after the first Police Academy movie, he is, the Polo Lounge and driving, a Ferrari. And so he's really, he is all in on these movies. And so he wants to keep this train going. Police Academy 3, Back in Training. This movie is released, like I said, March 21st, 1986. Oh, Kelly, there's something we haven't spoke about yet. The runtime on these movies.
Oh, I didn't pay attention to them, actually.
I just want to real briefly. So the first Police Academy is 96 minutes. So that's about a standard comedy. That's about standard comedy. The second Police Academy is 87 minutes. So you're going to start seeing a formula here. The third one is 83 minutes.
Wow.
So these things, 4 is 88 minutes. So they're actually getting shorter as they make these films. So Police Academy 3, Back in Training, is going to see all of our favorite characters go back to the police academy because there are, in this unnamed city, which is Toronto, there are actually 2 police academies, and the governor has decided that there's not enough money to keep both of them open. So for the first time, we have some real stakes involving, Commandant Lassard and the police academy. So it's all about a competition between the 2 different academies, and whichever one wins the competition, that academy stays open. So all of our favorite, recruits from the first 2 movies are back to help Lassard, who's barely in Part 2. He has 2 scenes in the movie.
That I didn't even notice that he had, but I guess that makes sense that he was in 2 so little. There was so much going on in 2.
There's so much going on in 2. What's your general thoughts on Part 3?
I would actually say this one didn't stand out to me that much, except for Bobcat and Kazurinsky both becoming cops in this one, and then roommates also, which is really hilarious. But yeah, I wasn't as involved in the plot of it. I mean, some of the things were fun. Like I liked, I don't know why, but I always like when people put on a musical show. So I liked when, Callahan and Hooks sang and Tackleberry's on the sax and, Hightower and Sweet Chuck are like doing backup. I don't know. Yeah.
So this is the film. It's interesting because this is the movie that I thought, this is one of those ones that I hadn't seen in probably 20 years. It had been a long time since I'd seen this movie. And it was one of those films where I can recall over the past 6 or 7 years starting the movie, getting 10 minutes into it, and then I wouldn't say losing interest, but something just happened that made me stop watching it. I watched this early this morning, convinced that I knew every beat of this film, and I had forgotten most of it. And
I know that's what keeps happening to me, because I rewatched this one too, because I watched it and then I was kind of distracted while I was watching it the first time, and I was like, I should really revisit 3 because I don't remember what happened in it. Like, I don't know why this one just wants to wipe itself from my memory. It's not really like so different or worse than the others or anything, but I have a harder time with this one.
So here's what going into the movie.
The same author, same screenwriter as the next one, which I do enjoy.
Yes.
Which I think I'm generally alone in that, but so I don't know why.
So here's what I remembered going into this movie, and then I'll tell you what I forgot. I remembered that Sweet Chuck and Zed became police officers. I knew that Fackler's wife becomes a police officer. She's also clumsy. I knew that there was the Japanese highway patrol officer there to study the methods of the United States Police Academy. There's a very funny interaction with Mauser the first time they meet. And I remember there was a jet ski chase at the end. That's all I remember. Do you know what I forgot? I forgot about the musical number. All right. I forgot about the scene with the eyebrows. I completely forgot about that. And most importantly, in a scene that I remember as a child, because my parents let me watch this movie. Like, this was not an off-limits movie for, this came out in what, 85? 86? This came out in 86. This was not an off-limits movie for me. So it was rated PG. I was totally allowed to watch this film. The scene involving Proctor and the prostitute from the first movie, and his whole sequence, which goes on way longer than you expect it to go on.
It goes on forever, yeah.
Where he has
like,
no...
There's a naked guy running around here, and...
it just...
Even though it is, like, anxiety-inducing.
That was the thing. As a kid, it gave me anxiety. The scene where he's trying to hide from the police car and he's using trash cans to keep himself covered, and he just raises the trash can to cover his face. I don't know why I laugh every time at that one.
I know, me too.
But this also is the first time that we're going to see a third act set piece that becomes serious and has, exciting music. And I'm going to go ahead and just say it for those who may think these movies are just, I don't know, they're not a fan of these movies. Really well done stunt work involving that jet ski and, motorboat sequence. That whole chase sequence, I think, is done really effectively. Yeah, no, it's like even Sweet Chuck, he's like, I think there's one moment where he's on a jet ski and it goes under the water briefly, and comes back up. Or like it goes from one body of water over a piece of land into another body of water. It goes underneath the water. And I was like, that's more competent than the average Police Academy movie. I thought it was really effective. I was like, wow, that is really good stunt work. And this is 86. They actually had to film this stuff. There wasn't any ability to just do it. Do it in post and CGI and these jet skis. So I was impressed by that. But at the same time, that line where Mahoney says, "I'm going after the governor," and everything just gets serious. I'm like if you look at the climactic finale of part 2 at the old zoo. I'm sorry, there's a line where he goes the old zoo. I don't even know where I've never been to the new zoo. Right. It's interesting. It's interesting how they just go to this serious ending, and they're going to keep that up for parts 4 and 5, but not really with part 6. Well, and Gene Quintano, who wrote this one and the next one, he's done stuff like King Solomon's Mines. So like he is kind of like an adventure, action kind of a guy. And he did the Van Damme movie Sudden Death also, which was awesome. Great movie. I just watched that like 2 nights ago and I was like, whoa, that holds up. But maybe that's why there's more action. Okay, fair enough. Now, when you say King Solomon's Mine, are we talking about the canon Alan Quartermain King Solomon's Mine? Yeah, he did both of them. He did Alan Quartermain and Lost City of Gold and King Solomon's Mine. Both with Sharon Stone from part 4. That's right. We were just talking today about Sharon Stone's career pre Total Recall, and the light bulb didn't even go off that she is in the Alan Quartermain movies. I didn't even think about that. No, she would pop up like in those kind of like roles of about the same size for a long time before she, got Basic Instinct. So I mean, Total Recall was a standout too, but she's got that great line. You won't kill me. We're married. Yeah. So are we going to stay? I'm going to go ahead and say that for part 3, it's kind of hard to pick out my favorite or funniest scene of the movie because I kind of agree with you. This one, it's kind of a paint by numbers. Yeah. Much more little episodes than that you're like following the plot really all that much. Yeah. So. I'll just say the movie is better when Zed and Sweet Chuck are on screen. Agreed. I also, even though it's maybe not quite as good because it's
it is a knockoff of the previous movie, but that eyebrows thing was still funny. And it's funny how it goes for a few scenes as he tries on like different eyebrows when his get ripped off.
He's talking to the police commissioner and his eyebrow falls off and he's like, "You're falling to pieces here. You're falling apart." This is going to be the last time we're going to see Mauser in a movie. Mm-hmm. If we're not going to have G.W. Bailey, I'm okay with Mauser. I actually liked him in both movies. I really did.
Yeah, I think I always had a little bit of a wall up against him because I was such a G.W. Bailey fan. I was like, why did we switch? What was wrong with him? Because they're playing kind of similar. Like everything about what they do to the plot is the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Mauser. I mean, he's good. He's funny. It's just G.W. Bailey is fantastic.
So
and he was at this moment too. Like he was in Mannequin. He was really, he endeared himself to me in this period.
He's playing the exact same character in Mannequin with his bulldog Rambo.
Except Rambo is like Proctor.
Yeah.
Proctor in that is a dog.
I love it. Mannequin. I just finished Andrew McCarthy's biography about the Brat Pack years. This is off subject. And he was rather dismissive about Mannequin.
Well, I'm not that surprised. I mean, I think he's kind of a serious guy, and obviously that's not the most serious movie, but I love it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy that movie. So Police Academy 3, $12 million budget. So the budgets are they're adding $4 million to each time they make one of these movies. 4.5, $8 million, and get $12 million budget, which I get, especially when you look at that, third act set piece that couldn't have been cheap to film.
Well, and also too, this was not a period where even if they were getting raises per movie, this wasn't like the $1 million paycheck era. No. I don't think, so that wasn't where it was coming from.
No, and they've got to, I agree. The box office return on this, though, $107 million. Still,
wow.
like it's working. This formula is working so much now that people are now expecting another one. There's not a question of are they going to make another one. It's can't wait for March to get here for the next.
Well, and also like HBO was, I don't know what year it, premiered as a network, but they all played on HBO or whatever the, Cinemax or whatever it was back then. I'm pretty sure it was just HBO. But so while you were waiting for the next one, you were like learning the lines from the previous one. Like it was all year Police Academy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, is released April 3rd, 1987. This is on a $17 million budget. The movie's going to gross $76.8 million. So it's a step down as far as the financial gains of the first few movies, but it's still a success by any measure. A couple notable things about Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. Number one is this is going to be the last film that Steve Guttenberg is going to appear as Carrie Mahoney. Number two, we're going to see the return of G.W. Bailey. And number three, this is the first on-screen performance of David Spade. I watched this movie yesterday. I watched it last night, going into it with the idea that, I guess what I'm trying to say is I thought Police Academy 3 was going to be the better time of the two. And I thought Police Academy 4 was going to be all right, well, let's just start getting through these because we're going to have a podcast and talk about these. And I'm going to have to reverse that and flip that and say that I actually had a better time. I laughed more during 4 than I did 3. And a lot of that is because of G.W. Bailey's return.
Yeah, agreed. I have always been a huge fan of Citizens on Patrol. And every time I hear that other people do not feel that way and it's like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm like, what? I don't understand this. And I think for me, it's so much that the cast just got amazing. Like, because you not only, again, have G.W. Bailey coming back, but you have, and, some different people too, like Callahan and Hooks, all the usuals. You have Sharon Stone, also Brian Backer from Moving Violations again, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. and Corinne Bohrer as Bobcat's love interest, who I've always liked her for some reason. And you've got Randall Tex Cobb, Billy Bird as Mrs. Feldman. She's from 16 Candles and One Crazy Summer. So like, I just feel like it's really packed with people that I like. And then again, the Bobcat love interest story just cracks me up.
It's just hilarious. And when he goes to the poetry, it just, again.
Oh my gosh. Yes. The poetry reading.
Everything just works. Although there's a couple scenes in this movie that I thought were the whole skateboarding sequence, Kelly. I'm just asking myself, is it because skateboarding was just blowing up at that time?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I remember at the end of that skateboarding sequence, which, by the way, that is Tony Hawk as the stunt double for David Spade. And Tony,
I think they said he was gonna be, right, and then he was he grew too much. He had a growth spurt or something like that, and so I don't know. So they let him also just be himself. I might need to check that story.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I'll have to look it up because it was his skateboarding collective known as the Bones Brigade that did all the stunt work.
You can see Tony Hawk's face in
some of the scenes. Absolutely. And the best part is like you see this incredible skateboarding sequence and then it cuts to Brian Becker like nervously like coming into frame, and you see he's wobbling a little bit. You're like, easy there, guy. Like you can tell he is not a skateboarder.
Yeah. But I think David Spade really was he might not be Tony Hawk, but like I think he was kind of that kind of a dude.
Oh, there's a scene where he's in the mall and it's him and you see him just kind of whip
him like weaving through the people.
Absolutely.
In the crowd.
Absolutely. I picked up on that as well. I said, yeah. So he was definitely comfortable on the skateboard. So, but that whole scene is, I guess we're just, skateboarding was hot. And then they stop and Brian Becker's like, I want to check this guy out because there's a guy doing BMX tricks, which again, Rad had just come out around this time, and me and my friends were obsessed with that as well. So the 80s were great. Just what a
I know.
What a great time. The other characters, did we get the introduction of House. Tommy House, little Tommy Conklin used to bounce me on my knee, on your knee. I did. High Towers, I did. That whole sequence where Brian Becker, David Spade, and House, they think they're ready, and they take him out on the mission. When the scene where Hightower is doing the voodoo chant, and Brian Becker and David Spade just look terrified. Look at the look on House's face. Like he doesn't say anything. He doesn't change the facial expression, but it is so funny. Like just I probably rewound that scene 3 or 4 times because the just the level of the acting that he did, just the look on his face. He's got this confused look, and I'm scared at the same time. It was brilliant.
Yeah. No, he's really good. And then he's in 5 as well. He's the only one of them, I guess, that's stuck with being a cop. He's
definitely in 5. For the basic spoiler-free plot of Police Academy 4 is that Commandant Lessard has essentially taken, like a neighborhood watch style of, plan, and he's going to train citizens in rudimentary police work to help assist the police. And it's basically just how do we get back to the police academy and have really fun training sequences.
Yeah.
So, but the movie does also have I think, really well done third action set piece with the biplanes and the hot air balloons.
It is, although it is completely, and I usually don't care about these things, but like completely unbelievable. I mean, they would all be dead.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no way. They're like, flipping over in planes, wrestling in planes,
wing walking without parachutes, like
exactly, jumping onto hot air balloons with nothing, no rope, no anything. It's nuts.
But still looked really good. I was shocked. I was like, this is really, really impressive.
And I don't know how I didn't remember that part. Like I remembered more of the character stuff and did not remember that set piece at the end.
Yeah, I was really, really impressed. I really liked it. So this is going to be the part where I say that my standout for this movie is going to be Captain Harris. That's G.W. Bailey. I know we really push Zed on 2 and 3, but this is the he's the reason for me to keep watching these movies from this point on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all the way through to Mission to Moscow. It's like at the very least, you've always got G.W. Bailey.
Yeah, and his chemistry with Proctor in this film is just it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, and it's so funny because, Proctor was not initially cast to be his sidekick. So it was just kind of default, like, well, we like Proctor, we want to keep him. So now he's just the lackey to Harris instead of Mauser. And it's like without a beat skipped, and it worked great. And
the thing we should just talk about Proctor for a moment. The thing about him is his infectious enthusiasm for everything.
Yeah.
I love that detail about him. Like no matter what happens, he always sees the positive in everything. Like when he's cutting Mauser's hair in part 2 and he's like, this is going to be great. It's going to look good. Listen, let me just fix this up. When he's doing his eyebrows. Oh no, I think you're really going to like what I've done here. Like he's just like that character is somebody I'm like, I would want to spend a couple hours just hanging out with this guy because like, imagine taking Proctor to an amusement park. It'd be the greatest day ever.
Puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a puppy dog. Like no matter how many things he destroys or whatever goes wrong, it's just, what now? It's great.
It's great. This is the perfect time to kind of talk about, each one of our characters because we're 4 films in. So Hightower, okay, Bubba Smith, famous football player. His thing is he's just a big guy. He's giant.
And yet, so he scares everyone because he's giant, but he's actually I think they said in the first one, he used to be a florist.
Yeah.
He's actually the sensitive one.
Yeah, it's terrific. And then Michael Winslow I actually saw him in stand-up about, it would have been 16, 17 years ago. I saw him do a stand-up routine. And it's Kelly, it's exactly what you think. It's just him doing his thing. But it was really great. Like there's a scene in part 6 where he does like a Jimi Hendrix thing.
Yes, that was the standout for me of him too. That Jimi Hendrix.
And he did that live. And it goes on for like a couple minutes. Like he does a whole performance.
It's pretty amazing how he can do like Jimi Hendrix's voice, but also every sound out of the guitar.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was. I don't think it gave me a new appreciation for him because when you watch these movies, you wonder how much of that is done in ADR and post and stuff like that. But when you see it live in person and you're like, oh,
that's just him. Yeah.
He really can do that. Like that's remarkable.
Yeah. He had a couple in this series where it's like, blink and you miss it almost like sound effects. I'm like, how did he ever know that he could do that, discover this talent? It's weird, because he was so huge and it was the kind of thing where kids in your class would try to do it. It was like a thing people tried to mimic and nobody's ever done it since.
No.
You would think it's like prop comedy. Okay, I'll be a prop comic too. As big as his thing was, you would think people would try to mimic it and nobody's ever been able to do it.
No, it's
the
incredible.
Only one. And he's also in Spaceballs doing
exactly.
that.
I was about to say that he literally parlayed this into a scene in Spaceballs.
Yeah.
It was
the bleeps, the creeps, and the I don't know, something.
That's not all he's lost.
Yeah.
That's a great line. Tackleberry might be what we call problematic by today's standards. That might be the one.
I know he's so cuddly though.
Yeah.
And in the one he reveals he's a virgin. It's like, oh, that's why you're so militant. He's never actually. It's weird. It's like he's into guns and he's into violence, but he's not actually into hurting anybody. It's really strange.
Nobody gets shot in these movies.
No.
That.
For all of the destruction and firing indiscriminately.
Yeah. No one has ever died in a Police Academy movie. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that is the case.
I think so.
So, and again, that speaks to why most of these movies are PG and for a lack of a better one, family friendly for the most part.
Yeah. I think the most, I mean, because they're very cartoonish, but I think the most anyone ever got injured was like Tim Kazurinsky has his arm in a sling, and he gets bandaged up at one point. I don't even remember after what. Probably after they shot up his lamp store.
Yeah, and Harris has to have his arms.
Right, he has to have his arms propped
because
up.
of the mace.
Right, that was a good one.
And that's Citizens on Patrol. That's part 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many pranks in these movies. I kind of forgot how prank based they are. Like every movie, and I want to say it's like maybe the 6th one where it is just nonstop pranks on Harris, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's working. Standout scene for you in this movie?
I love the seduction scene between Bobcat and Corinne Bohrer, his love interest, where they're like both shaking their hair and running to each other in slow motion. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was good. I like that. I'm gonna go with the "we're ready" scene. You're here because you're ready, and the whole scene of all the van. I just thought that was just House just sells that for me. It's just perfectly. We're gonna go on to March 18th, 1988.
Our neck of the woods.
Yes.
The Floridian neck of the woods.
That is correct. I live 3.5 hours from Miami Beach. So we're talking about 1988's Police Academy 5, Assignment Miami Beach. Can I just say for the record, no one calls it Miami Beach.
No,
South Beach, or you're going to Miami. Beach. I've never now, but of course, I was living in Canada at the time when this movie came out. So Miami Beach could have just been anywhere in the world, and I would have been like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I was in South Florida at this point, like the Palm Beachy kind of area.
Sure.
So that's like 2 hours, maybe hour and a half, something like that from Miami. So it wasn't all the way there, but it was close enough. I was like, they came to me.
Yeah.
My favorite people came to me.
Well, you got also Revenge of the Nerds too. Yeah.
Exactly. The nerds came also.
Yeah. Nerds in Paradise.
I would like to do a double feature of these two.
Yeah.
Just like these wacky ensembles going to Florida for vacation.
I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Which is the better of the two movies? Police Academy 5 or Revenge of the Nerds 2?
I'm going to say Revenge of the Nerds 2.
I am too.
Because that musical number is great.
Yeah. I just...
Oh, and the lady who gives them the tour of the hotel just cracks me up.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's like a dead body, outline on the floor. And she's like, covers it up with a rug. Like, no problem.
No. I love
that movie.
All right. So Police Academy 5, Assignment Miami Beach. Basic plot of this movie is, we've got to get everybody to Miami. There's a international police officers convention happening in Miami, and Commandant Lassard is going to be honored there. But they've also found out, that Commandant Lassard has reached the mandatory retirement age. So this is kind of going to be sort of his swan song. We're going to go to Miami and celebrate you. And then, of course, he gets mixed up.
Even though not really.
Even though not really. But we also have to have, a B plot, which is, these these robbers, these burglars, if you will, and they've stolen some diamonds and there's the switcheroo at the airport. And I don't want to say anything more than that.
Except that it's Rene Auberjonois, who is the bad guy, which is very not what he normally looks or sounds like.
You're absolutely correct, and he's still alive, 79 years old. Okay, and what is he What did I primarily know him from? I want to say
he was off the top of my head. I want to say he was in a few Altman things.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's part of it. I want to say, I should probably look it up. I know he was in Eyes of Laura Mars, which I'm a fan of.
Where I remember him from, because it's a show we watched, my parents watched a lot, was the show Benson. And I remember he was one of the main characters on Benson. And I think that's how I recognized him when we watched part 5. I was like, oh, it's the guy from Benson. So, okay. Part 5, Assignment Miami Beach. I went into this movie not thinking much about it. And I'm going to be honest with you, when it was over, I didn't give it much thought. I don't know where you stand on this one.
Well, it's funny because when I was in Florida, I was like, this is terrible. You know, how it doesn't look like the movies that I'm watching. Like, I wanted to be in like John Hughes, you know, Chicago suburbs or something. But now the further I've been away from it, now I love seeing Florida on screen. And like, I do enjoy that. Like, I love the day glow colors and like the beach wear and all of that. And it really brings me back to childhood, which is kind of crazy. But, and also Gutenberg, he did not come to this one, but he did come to Florida for Cocoon.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
So Florida was kind of big in this period. But yeah, I do. Like, I'm a sucker for, even in cartoons or sitcoms or whatever, when they leave their normal set and their normal outfits and they go to like, even if it's just the grocery store, but especially when they go on vacation and they've got like vacation wear. And, you know, these guys, normally we see them in their uniform. So it's like civilian clothes, Police Academy. So that was very exciting to me. I don't know why. And when Tackleberry pulls the gun on the shark.
On the shark, yeah. That's
my favorite.
That's in the trailer. Like that is because we've spent so much time with these characters. We know now exactly how they're going to react to situations. So of course it would be Tackleberry that would pull the gun on the shark. And I don't know why the suntan lotion dork thing was so effective for me, but that worked. But
yeah, I always wondered my whole, you know, childhood, like, would that really work? And I wasn't about to try it. But then accidentally, it sort of happened to me. I used to have this necklace that said my name on it in high school. And I was out in the sun and it did leave like a suntan tattoo of the necklace. So it's like, it would work.
It would work.
It's believable.
But we need to talk about the fact that there's no Mahoney in this movie, and that had to have been in real time kind of jarring for people that were.
Yeah. It was for me because I loved Steve Gutenberg. Again, in all of the things he was in this period, not just as Mahoney. So that was a little bit of an adjustment. And I was like, well, you know, I guess the Florida for me personally made up for it, but that's a very personal thing. And
I guess it would be the opposite for me because I've lived here since 1998. So I'm so accustomed to everything that's happening in this movie. I'm just used to it. So I guess I wasn't able to transplant myself out of there. But I do agree.
Yeah, I've been gone for long enough that it was like, ooh, flashback, you know, to me.
And I'm the same way, like when I see stuff that's like in Tennessee or something, because I used to live there. You know, I'm like, oh, I miss that. Like, I want to watch, you know, Standing Tall and other movies from, you know, the 70s that take place, you know, in that area because I get very nostalgic for it. So I totally understand that. Matt McCoy is poised to be the new Mahoney.
Yeah.
How does he do, Kelly?
I like him. You know, he's not Steve Gutenberg, who's about to, you know, who has so much that he's about to take over cinema for the next few years. But, you know, I definitely liked him. He didn't, you know, turn me off of the series in any way, but he didn't really you know, I had in my mind more that he just almost stepped into the role of Mahoney, but he's not quite the leader that Mahoney was, that everyone turns to for advice and stuff. So he's a little different. He's a little less of that leader.
That's the one thing I noticed about this film and the subsequent the sixth movie was this movie becomes more focused on the ensemble that was the rest of the characters throughout the movies. And it's like, well, we don't have Mahoney, so we're just going to spend more time with each one of those characters. Frankly, we spend more time with Harris than we do pretty much any other character, it seems like.
And I think that's also kind of why I'm okay with it, because like I think Harris is funny. That scene with him and Proctor hitting on women.
Yeah, it's so brilliant.
Because that's something I would never imagine them doing. You know, I've never imagined Harris's romantic life or Proctor's romantic life. So that was funny.
So, standout character in this movie, I'm gonna go Harris. I'm gonna go G.W. Bailey.
Yeah. And also I think Lassard is really funny in this because when he ends up getting kidnapped because this bag switcheroo, and he thinks it's part of a demonstration. Yeah. So he's just being super polite, and I think that's pretty funny. And
this is the most screen time that Lassard has in any of the movies. Like he is all over this film. Mm-hmm. So
and I really like him. I like his presence and his voice.
So for me, I think the standout, not the standout, but the one of the scenes that I just like the most is the setup for when Harris has decided that he's going to go to the conference in Miami, and he tells Proctor, first class, spare no expense. And it's one of those things where most Police Academy movies have a scene where something happens, but this one, they really cultivate this scene where it's Proctor thinks he's calling the airline, right? And they end up getting booked on budget rent-a-plane, but you see them at the airport. Oh, you're on a private jet, right? Private, and then you finally see that. Like, it's a great payoff, and Proctor couldn't be more happy. He's so excited with all the animals.
I was thinking that too. I was like, I'd go on a plane like that, and I could pet all the animals. That would be way better than a regular plane.
So I was a big fan of that whole setup from the timer. It's like two first-class tickets to where we end up. I really like that. So
yeah, I actually like these. I think that's what I found during the series is there are so many one-off scenes and it jumps back and forth between this one and this one and this person and this person, that I liked those gags that took a few scenes to fully pay off, or you got to like drag the laugh out.
Yeah, I mean, and it happens in part 2 with the whole him getting his hair glued down to the finale where he falls down. You know, he's got the rope and he's got that awful wig on, and it finally comes off. Like, so some of these things do pay off. I agree with you. So this movie is released March 18th, 1988 on a $14 million budget. The box office is $54.5 million, but it needs to be said that right in this time, 86, 87, 88, is where we see the explosion of home video rentals. So these box office numbers are one thing, but these movies, between the television licensing rights, like you said, on HBO and all this stuff, they're making money beyond the box office at this point. Like, they really are.
I don't know that I saw any of them. This is kind of crazy. I don't know that I saw any of them in the theater. Maybe I did, but I watched them at home all the time.
I didn't see a single one in the theater. In fact, I probably watched these movies on a 1-year gap, because if you recall, when a movie was in the if a movie, like I'm looking right here, March 18th, 1988, this movie would not come out until November on home video. Like, it was a long time between theatrical and home video. Plus, the movie would stay in theaters a lot longer too. I mean, this thing was probably in the theaters for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
$54 million box office. So it's not doing the box office numbers, and it's starting to wear on people. That brings us to 1989, March 10th, 1989. A movie directed by Peter Boners, written by Stephen Kerwick, again produced by Molansky. 84 minutes long, $15 million budget, $33 million at the box office. This is Police Academy 6, City Under Siege. And Kelly, I went into this movie thinking that this was my least favorite of them all, not counting Mission to Moscow. We'll get to that in a second. But of the 6, what I call the 6 proper Police Academy movies, I went into this one thinking this is going to be the one that I saw it a couple times when it first came out. Didn't care. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Boy, I had a great time with this movie. Just a blast.
I was the same. Like I had this memory of like, again, that the last real movie was 5, and I think most people would consider, I don't know, the last real movie was 4, maybe even 3 for some people. And I was like, I expected this huge drop off in quality, and there wasn't. And I do feel like part of that is also because there was a lot of time spent on Harris again.
Yeah.
I feel like he's carrying these things.
Oh, he's the star of the movie, in my opinion. At this point, he really is. I mean, I'm looking at Wikipedia. They've got him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They got him 7th on the call sheet here on Wikipedia, but he's the guy. All the movie opens up with him. I'm just gonna start by saying, like, this movie, again, basic plot of this film is there's a crime wave happening in the city. The mayor sets up a special task force headed by Eric Lassard and our, all the characters we know, including Captain Harris, to try to figure out who's doing the crime wave and stop it. That's the basic plot of the movie. But the movie,
and because there's like maybe a leak.
Yes, that's right. Because the what's the gang called? The Wilson Heights gang. The Wilson Heights gang seems to always be one step ahead of the police and know exactly
which wouldn't be difficult with these, but
no, but I love the opening line of this movie. The opening joke of this movie is you have Proctor singing A Christmas Carol, and that would normally be a minor exposition to let you know what time of the year this movie is taking place. And when Harris says Christmas is a good 4 months away, that right there, immediately, I just got a huge laugh on that. I mean, just, you're singing Christmas carols and Christmas is a good 4 months away. Like, that right there set the tone for me where I was, because I had forgotten about that joke. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Because of G.W. Bailey and Proctor, I'm all in on this.
Yeah, and it, this one I felt like leaned into the cartooniness even more. Like the bad guy is a silhouette with a, disguised voice behind glass. Like it's very Inspector Gadget or something. But I thought the gags were really good. I was sort of surprised. Again, I didn't remember how many good ones there were. Like, there's the exploding ink thing. There's the window washer thing. There's window
washer. Could we touch on that just for a second?
That's so funny.
I can't. I had to watch that multiple times. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I just have to say that where there's twice where Harris is about to get the information that will crack the case, and Proctor's got the squeegee, and he's
like actually just concerned with doing the job of washing the windows.
If you don't squeegee, then it'll leave streaks. I can't. And I'm sorry. So, okay. So you were talking about some of the other effective scenes that
the other one that really stood out was like, because they keep having these crimes committed right under their nose.
Yeah.
And when like they're like, we're going to get the jump on all of these other cops and we're going to be like in the truck with the diamonds. Yeah. And then like the gang does the cartoon thing of like, you saw a hole around where the diamonds are in the car, but the cops have their back to it. And so they're taking the diamonds anyway. And Harris ends up when the van takes off he falls through the hole and has to like run with the van.
Yeah, that was terrific.
And I was like, it's very cartoony, but it worked for me.
It did. And
I thought it was pretty clever.
And it was interesting because this movie, like Part 5, this is these two movies have us following the criminal element as part of the movie. For as much as you and I are talking about how much we enjoyed this film, audiences are really starting to not. I mean, Lazansky they paid the movies made for $15 million, grosses $33.2 million. Again, it's going to make more money home video. But I guess the question becomes for Paul Lazansky, those returns just aren't going to cut it anymore, and he's just gonna say we're good for a little while here. So this is kind of the end of the first iteration of Police Academy. Before we get into what happens afterwards, standout character. I mean, I guess there's no surprise here. G.W. Bailey.
Yeah.
Favorite scene for me is probably the window washing scene. because it does end up having one last unexpected laugh when they're playing the audio recording of Harris saying, please, I'll feed the poor. I'll do it. And then they play it and they stop. And then Proctor hits play on the tape recorder one more time. That, to me, that's the best scene for me. What about for you?
Yeah, that was a good one. It would be either that, or I also enjoyed it may not have hit me on other viewings, but this viewing, it hit me. Michael Winslow, like he's having it out with one of the bad guys, like in the end climax.
Yeah.
And he falls through all of this stuff, and that's like sheet metal and wires and all of that, and he like grabs them and puts them in front of himself like they're coming out of him, and then he pretends to be like a Terminator type of robot, and it like terrifies the bad guy.
You're a robot?
Yeah, and normally that would be stupid and you would be like, who would believe that? But who else can do voice, sound effects like that? So I believed it. I could buy it.
And I will say,
I thought that was a clever thing to do.
There was one other moment for me at the end too, when Hightower has the one-on-one with the big giant guy with the beard, where it's like, we've spent 6 movies with you. It's time to see what you're capable of. And it's like the guy. I just thought, well, here we go. We're going to finally see Hightower kick some butt, and he does. And I really enjoyed that sequence. So the Police Academy franchise, or at least the first 6 movies, they're going to 1989. Can I just say, this is another one of my side tangents. This is a time period where a lot of franchises are getting exhausted to the point of, I'm thinking of 89 as Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child, Police Academy 6, 1989. I think that was like, it's not just the end of a decade, it's the end of an era for a lot of different franchises. Very interesting.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Jimmy this morning and was saying that, like, part of the trouble when a series goes on so long is you have to be true to the series and the tone that it has set up, except that the times have changed. So the times have moved on from that being the thing that is what people want to see, but you can't completely change it.
Well said.
Or it's not the original series that you're trying to make a buck off of. And I think that's really what's going on in this one.
Well said. Interesting. Yeah, no, yep, you're
like,
absolutely
they didn't change. They didn't get less funny themselves, the cast or anything. It's just that the times changed, I think.
Yeah.
For the most part, in all those series.
You're absolutely correct. I agree. Well said. Well said. They're going to try to make a Police Academy animated series, which I believe lasts for 26 episodes. I can tell you that I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't see it. It wasn't, if it was on television, Saturday morning cartoon, wasn't one that I watched, so I really can't speak to it, but I do want to acknowledge that it does exist.
I think I did see it when it first came out, but it, was, I don't know, I didn't get sucked into it because they also had a the real Ghostbuster series. They had a Beetlejuice animated series. So it was one of those. But they also, when I was just on IMDb looking up every person and whatever, they also had like a live action series with Joe Flaherty. And then I've heard there's some other Police Academy movie in development, although you never know how outdated that is.
Sure. Yeah. I got my numbers wrong here. So the Police Academy, the animated series, lasted for 2 seasons, 65 episodes, from September 11th, 1988 to January 28th, 1989. That's a lot of episodes in a very first. Geez, that must have been a daily syndicated show. I don't know. But it was Paul Molansky was the showrunner on that one. He was also the showrunner on Police Academy, the series, which was first released on September 12th, 1997. 1 season, 26 episodes. Both of these were considered broadcast syndication television shows, according to this article I'm reading here. So that would interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I really think it depended on that original cast, which most of them are here in this last movie.
Let's talk about that.
The core group is still here. I should say also it's directed by Alan Metter, who directed Back to School and Girls Just Want to Have Fun, 2 movies that I love.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. Because Back to School, okay, you know what? Let's just get into it. We're talking about 1994's Police Academy Mission to Moscow, which was released in the United States on August 26, 1994. It had a budget of $10 million. Its box office was $1.2 million, and that's going to be a little bit deceiving because I don't even think this movie got a theatrical release in America. This was, from what I can recall, at least in America, a home video, a direct-to-video release. It might have had some screenings in L.A. and New York, but there was no big push for it. Returning cast of alumni include Michael Winslow, David Garf, Leslie Easterbrook, George Gaines, G.W. Bailey. So basically we're talking about Jones, Tackleberry, Callahan, Lassard, and Captain Harris are going to be the familiar ones. And
we lost Hooks and Hightower and Proctor.
Yeah, and Matt McCoy.
Matt McCoy.
Yeah, and House.
And House. I was a fan of Charlie Schlatter, who's like the new young guy.
Yeah.
Like the new kind of Gutenberg, Matt McCoy type of guy in this one. He was on the Ferris Bueller TV show as Ferris, where Jennifer Aniston played his sister. And he was also in 18 Again with George Burns and Heartbreak Hotel, which is a movie I'm fond of that Chris Columbus, I don't remember if he directed or just wrote it. But anyway, I was kind of a fan of him a little earlier than this.
Oh, the movie does have a very young Claire Forlani in the movie.
Yeah, and
Ron Perlman, Christopher Lee. I mean, there's names in this film.
Yeah.
So here's what I can. I want to go back to my memory here real quick because this was something I do recall renting in the video store. Probably would have been 95. I would have been maybe 17 when I sat down to watch this movie and only watched like 10 or 15 minutes of it. And this is not for me. I struggled to get through this film again today. Unfortunately for me, it just wasn't working.
Well, that's interesting. I think it has so much to do with my expectations when I watch them. Like, for instance, this one, I think I was like, ooh, a new Police Academy movie the first time I saw it, and then was kind of let down. But then this time I expected to get nothing out of it, not enjoy it at all. And therefore I liked it a little better, because my expectations were low. Yeah, so I actually had a little bit better of a time with it this time. I
went into it with negative expectations, and I guess I just wasn't prepared to change my opinion. The part where Harris gets borscht dumped on him, I thought was funny. There's again, the Harris scenes
Yeah, Harris and Tackleberry, let's say, are in Swan Lake or something in this. They dress as ballerinas.
Take them out of this movie, and I don't think it's something I would ever want to revisit again.
Yeah, that is probably true. I did like that Leslie Easterbrook got more to do in this one. Yeah. Because you have fewer of the people, again, they get to do more. And so I was glad she got to do more. I actually learned about her. I always assumed she was a playmate or something, just the way she's presented,
sure.
All the guys ogling her and everything. I assumed that's where she came from. She has such a pretty name. I don't know. I just thought that's probably where she came from. And did not know that, no, it's a totally just drama background.
Wow.
And that she was on season 6 through 8 of Laverne and Shirley, which is a show that I loved, but I don't remember.
Wow.
But she was a regular on that show. And also learned that she grew up in a town with only 574 people in Nebraska.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
okay.
And then went to an all women's drama college. So it's very much not her character. And so I kind of liked her getting to be the chanteuse and, that was all I had remembered from the previous viewing, was that she's a nightclub singer in this one, in disguise, trying to seduce Ron.
And I can see, I could see her in a number of different dramatic roles as a lawyer, as a detective, as, you know, as a politician. You know, like I can picture her because she does come across, she's got real gravitas. She's not used very much in any of the movies except for setups and punchlines. You know, so that, you know,
I mean, she is almost like someone who the performance, I mean, her voice is so great too, just when she's even yelling at people, like as the instructor at the academy.
Yeah.
But you know, she's almost like a lot of the time she looks like Stallone in Cobra. Like she's always got her aviator sunglasses
even
on,
at night.
you know, like just the look does so much of the acting in that role.
Yeah.
Normally. So it was nice to get her to see her do something else. Also, I had forgotten Rob Zombie is like a fan of her and has put her in a couple of
Devil's
movies.
Rejects. That's where I remember last seeing her, which is the I know I don't want to get into controversial opinions. It's the only Rob Zombie movie that I can tolerate. The other ones are so aggressive. They're so aggressive.
They are aggressive. That is for sure. Oh, I'm a big fan, by the way, of his Monsters.
I know we talked about that. Yeah, that was that was one of those ones where I asked the question: did he purposely because that trailer that was released, which was clearly an unpolished version of the film, was getting so much negative buzz online that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very different look.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. But the guy who plays Herman Munster, it just cracks me up. I mean, and he's a normal Rob Zombie favorite, but I thought he did such a great job. Yeah,
no, that movie was better than I thought it was going to be. Let me just tell you that. I actually went into that film going, oh, well, you know, we'll see. And then I found myself like, oh, you're an hour into this movie and you're still very much invested in what's going on.
Yeah. He didn't really do, I mean, he did with the visual, but he didn't really change the monsters of it. You know, the jokes were the same. The writing was the same. The music type, you know, was the same. So I dug it.
But yeah, no. So Leslie Esbrook, she's brutal in The Devil's Reject. That's again, I'll have to have you on in October for a Halloween related episode where we can get a little deeper into some of these discussions. Police Academy Mission to Moscow, Kelly, was released 30 years ago. We are 30 years removed from the Police Academy films. And honestly, like there is a whole generation, like we talked about at the top of this episode, there's a whole generation that had no idea what we're even talking about. Doesn't even know. These films have not, I'm not going to say they're lost to the sands of time because our generation keeps them alive by having discussions about them. But, you know, you don't see these on TV. You don't see these on Netflix or streaming services for the most part. They're not actively out there for people to discover. And I think that
is so wild.
That is a, you know, we're not talking for there's going to be people that have never seen these movies. They're going to sit down. They're going to watch the first few ones. And they're going to say, Dana and Kelly, what are you guys even talking about?
I know. Well, and we were at such a formative age when they came out. It's, you know, I don't know how they'd hit if you had no, you know, if you're a younger person and you have nothing tying you to them. Yeah. I don't know how they'd strike you.
Well, that was the thing.
I think Bobcat would still come across. Bobcat's still great, timeless. And G.W. Bailey, surely.
And I'm going to say, like, the litmus test for me was, you know, my girlfriend, we're right around the same age. We've never discussed the Police Academy movies. She hasn't watched them since the 80s. You know, she hasn't watched them since she was a kid. And she is laughing her ass off at a lot of these parts in a lot of these movies. And I said, yeah, these still work. These still work. But I don't know how they translate to a, you know, 22-year-old. I just don't know. And I'm not knocking the 22-year-old. Everybody's, you know, into their own thing, but it's amazing that these films don't even exist. Why is it we live in a world, Kelly, where The Fall Guy gets a remake?
Believe me, I think that I was like, does anyone know what The Fall Guy is anymore? I mean, you know, younger audiences, like, I don't know.
Like, call that movie The Stuntman. Why are you calling it The Fall Guy? Like,
Yeah.
I had the Fall Guy toys when I was a kid, but I wasn't even allowed to watch the TV show. It was too advanced for my 4-year-old brain, and it's, well, oh, by the way, side note, met Lee Majors 7 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Taller than I expected him to be. I can tell you that. 81 years old, still got it. Still got it. Still.
Wow.
I was just, he came into a restaurant that I was at, and he was there with a mutual acquaintance of mine, and I was formally introduced, and he was drinking a glass of red wine and being jovial and just super nice guy. So that was a big deal.
Wow, that's exciting.
So
we did watch a little bit of $6 Million Man. Right?
Yeah.
We sometimes watch that at night going to bed. We're big fans of like 70s TV shows at night before bed. And sometimes that's the one.
What's the show with Simon McCorkindale, the guy who plays Philip Fitzroyce in Jaws 3, where he can turn into an animal? He can turn into different animals. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Manimal.
Manimal. Is it? Yeah,
it's Manimal.
That's what I thought.
Manimal.
Yeah.
That's a show everyone needs to watch again. The 80s was great. It was a great time.
Yeah, the 80s were pretty cool.
Remember?
I think the cop thing right now is probably keeping people, like, they're so bungling. I don't know that people want to see, bumbling cops right now.
No, I got you.
I think that's part of it with Police Academy.
I'm frankly just shocked that they haven't remade, haven't even attempted to remake a Police Academy. But you make a good point. Like, it's such a hot button issue these days.
Yeah, it's like, it would take so little for people to be like, that's not funny.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So, before we wrap up, I just want to talk a little bit about Paul Molansky. Forgive me, he's still alive. He's 91 years old. Okay? So when it gets into producing movies, this is his Police Academy and post-Police Academy. This is where he was. Okay? So as a producer, he worked on Police Academy 2, Return to Oz. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Okay. 1989, he does the 3, 4, 5, 6. Then he does, like you mentioned, Honeymoon Academy. Okay.
Yeah.
Then he does a movie which I remember seeing this one in the theater because it was marketed as from the guy who brought you Police Academy. It's Ski Patrol. And I remember Ski Patrol. I remember.
No, that's the one with Dean Cameron, right?
That is the one with Dean Cameron. That's the one with the guy. I think his name was Maniac or something, where he would like wear a mask on two sides of his head, and he would change his personality. And I remember as a 12-year-old not really liking that movie, but I need to watch it again. 1990, he's also going to be producing The Russia House with Sean Connery and Michelle Pfeiffer. Okay. Cop and a Half, 1993, which, believe it or not, was a moneymaker. $14 million budget, made $40 million.
There was a little rash around that time of like Curly Sue, like you pair a precocious kid with somebody kind of movie. Dutch, even.
Dutch. Can we just... I think Dutch is a super underrated movie. I think people...
I think it's starting to be found and appreciated.
I watch that at least once a year. I love Dutch.
Yeah.
That is hands down my favorite Ed O'Neill performance. More so than Married with Children. There is something about the character of Dutch Dooley that I just resonated with. I really like that performance. And then after that, he does Police Academy Mission to Moscow. He does a movie called Fluke, which is about a dog. Log line here is, let's see, it stars Matthew Modine as a self-centered businessman who is reincarnated as a dog and attempts to reconnect with his family. Okay. Yeah. That movie, I'll have to watch that sometime. I've never actually even heard of that. Then he doesn't do anything from 95 all the way to 2017. He does a movie called Death of a Sheik, which doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page to tell you if that's anything of note. And then it just says here, the 8th installment or reboot has been in various stages of development hell. I'm referring to Police Academy since 2003. By January 2012, New Line Cinema announced that they would replace Melansky as the director of the upcoming Police Academy remake. Michael Winslow stated that the production of the 8th film, tentatively scheduled to commence in November of 2012. So I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
After years of delay, Steve Guttenberg announced in September 2018 that a sequel is once again in active development, stating the next Police Academy is coming. No details yet, but it is in a gift bag being readied. So that was 6 years ago. So
yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's amazing how these things fall through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelly, thank you for coming on to the Dana Buckler Show to talk about the Police Academy movies. If one person out there listens to this, has never heard of the Police Academy films, watches at least the first 4, has a great time, then we did our job. That's all.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I want to thank you for being on the show. Are you that active on social media? If people want to follow you or they want to reach out to you, or
active. I'm on Instagram. I think my name on Instagram. that's where I'm at.
all right.
Is not knowing quite what my name is on Instagram.
Fair enough.
I think I'm on there as I don't know what I'm on.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, suffice to say, if people want to find you, we'll
I'm on there.
Yeah, we'll find you. Well, I'll figure out where you are. I'll put a link in this episode show notes if people want to follow you and keep up with the work you're doing. So, do you want to follow me on Instagram? I'm on there at the Dana Buckler. I'm also on there on Instagram at the Dana Buckler Show. I'm on Twitter, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Dana Buckler Show. And if you want to email me, the DanaBucklerShow@gmail.com. Kelly, thank you so much for doing the show. I can't wait to have you back. I think we've already got a couple other ones planned, so it will not be a 2-year gap in between the next time you're on here. So thank you for doing the show.
Thank you so much. It was fun revisiting them.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait to talk again. All right, everybody, my name is Dana Buckler, and thank you so much for listening.